Hey guys! So in today's video, I'm gonna be sharing with you guys the 5 books that I read in July. This has been the most consistent reading month that I've had in 3 years. That's a lot. I read 5 books this month and honestly, it was a really good reading month for me. I liked all of the books I read except for maybe one. The first book that I read this month was Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, and initially I picked up this book because I was walking around Barnes & Noble and I immediately gravitated towards it because you have a black woman on the cover, and then it was also under the LGBT romance section. So I was like, oh my god, a black lesbian romance. Still a piece of garbage. So I bought the book and I read it in 2 days, but it was not the book for me. So in summary, the main character, Grace, graduates with her PhD in astronomy, and after a celebratory trip to Las Vegas, she ends up drunkenly married to a girl whose name she doesn't even know. The book follows Grace's journey into an existential life crisis where Grace feels like everything she ever knew is really just not how everything is.
Everything is not what it seems.
So let's start off with the pros of this book. Number 1, there is great representation. Like I said, I initially picked up this book because it was marked as an LGBT plus romance and I saw a black woman on the cover. So yes, there is a very diverse cast of characters. There are many different intersectionalities within the characters in this book. You have trans rep, you have South Asian rep, you have lesbian rep, you've got mixed characters, you've got black characters. So yes, the diversity in this book was on point. So editing me here, I just want to add, when I say the diversity is on point, I just mean that the representation is there. That doesn't reflect how the characters are portrayed or how well the author did in writing those different identities. I just mean that there is representation for those characters in the book. Another thing that I really liked was the premise of Grace's journey. There is a huge emphasis on self-development in this book. Grace struggles to find a job in the astronomy sector because of a number of systemic barriers, as her womanhood, her blackness, her queerness alienate her from her peers. And I thought this was incredibly relatable to read about because it's rare that we get to explore the complexities of the harshness of finding your place in a field that's unaccepting. When do you see a book about academic burnout? And another huge thing that I liked in this book is the character's journey and struggle to please her family's expectations and society's expectations. One thing I actually enjoyed about this book was the author's emphasis on making the theme that it's okay to rest, it's okay to take a break, that resting is productivity, and it's okay if you realize that you get to a certain point in your life where you've been doing one thing and then you don't like it anymore and you're unhappy, and that it's okay to go seek happiness in other fields, in other areas of your life. Okay, but then if we're talking about what I didn't like in the book, it's a whole lot. So first of all, I felt like the book had a better premise than what was actually written. So I'm saying all of these things that I liked, but I felt like they weren't carried out the way that the author may have wanted them to, because it just sucks, like, honestly. So first of all, even though this book was marketed as an LGBT plus romance, I felt like that was a secondary plot line to Grace's self-development, which was the central plot line. And in return, we ended up getting this insta-love, stupid, like, just love at first sight kind of romance. So if you don't like that, then I don't recommend this book because I don't like that. Also, the characters were extremely one-dimensional. They had a bunch of character traits that were kind of thrown at you and you're told that this is how the characters behave, this is why the characters are the way that they are, but it's never really shown throughout their actions or their dialogue or even just a backstory. They're just really one-dimensional, and it's like their diversity is their highlight. I felt like the job of Grace's friends in this book was to just support her and hug her every time she was going through something that was tough. And yes, that's what friends are for, but like that's the only time they'd appear in the book, and it just made it very difficult for me to want to connect with them. I also felt like the entire book could have been wrapped up within the first 20 pages because the rest of the book is just pretty repetitive. The writing was absolute trash, bro. Like, it was trash. I just felt like the book was so cringy and it was hoping to be poetic, and know, for me, it didn't accomplish that. So I rated this book 2 out of 5 stars. So the second book that I read this month was Crossfire by staceyann Chen. And unlike Honey Girl, I love this book. Crossfire is a collection of poems spanning staceyann Chen's 20+ year career. The poems are a mix of emotional and political and personal. It's an exploration of staceyann Chen's identity as someone who was abandoned by her parents, an immigrant, a woman, a lesbian, an outspoken social justice activist, and a single mother by choice. One thing that I love is that Chen doesn't hold back. The author just doesn't hold back. She's gonna call you a bitch if you're a bitch. The poems are raw, explicit, and expressive, making the impact of them a lot harder. Like I said, she's so unafraid to call out the bullshit, and that is incredibly liberating, especially when she's calling out people in power or just everyday assholes. Assholes and people in power, synonymous. She's an absolute master when it comes to rhythm, intonation, and delivering a poem that's meant to be on stage in a page. Hey, that rhymes. I highly recommend watching one of her performances on YouTube, and then if you like that, check out the book because it's awesome. I honestly want to read y'all one of them just so that you know how good it is. I rated it 4.5 stars, only half a star off because there were some poems that I thought were kind of slow, but other than that, it was a pretty solid read. So the next book that I read, oh my god, wait for it. All of booktube, all of YouTube, everyone is talking about this book. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. And honestly, I was kind of surprised because this book came out in 2016. And I remember hearing about it, and I read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Hadn't been able to get my hands on It Ends With Us. I didn't know too much going into the book, and I honestly believe that's how it should be when it comes to this because it makes the book's impact like 1,000 times better. Do not go Google what the summary is on this book. You have to just trust all the people that are raving about this book. I feel like it's not gonna hit you as hard if you know what it's about. You'll kind of expect what's happening. What I will tell you about this book is that it is a new adult book that is literally unputdownable. So once I got 100 pages into this book, it was fair game, and I ended up staying up until I think it was like 2 a.m. reading this book, and oh my god, it was so enjoyable. I literally would stop Kayla every 5 minutes and I'd be like, guess what just happened? And then I'd have to tell her because it was so good. I was constantly shocked, and I literally mean mouth wide open, shocked. I was completely blown away by the complexity of this book, and since I went into it with knowing nothing, I felt like an idiot for thinking that, you know, during the first 100 pages of the book, it would be really cheesy and stupid. No, there is so much depth to this book. If you like those kinds of books, if you don't like those kinds of books, then I still recommend this book to you. The main character of this book, Lily, has become one of my favorite heroines of all time. This book is told in a first-person narrative, so while she's going through the events of the story, you really get sucker punch because you're going through them too. You revisit Lily's memories as she's revisiting them, and the story unfolds the same way for you as it did for Lily. And you know what? That made this book hit so deep. And not only Lily, but the other characters in the book. They all have so much complexity to them, and for that reason, I love them so much. Another thing about this book that is absolutely perfect is that there's foreshadowing that starts from page 1. This book would be full of Easter eggs if you reread the book because there's just so much interwoven that, you know, you don't realize until the end, and I love that. I also want to note that the writing in this book is very beautiful. It's not like a classic style of writing. It is still very good because it's comprehensible, and I feel like it's the perfect book to recommend to any of your friends that don't necessarily read because it will definitely make them want to read more. I have a list of quotes that I wrote down just because I felt like so much of this book was highly impactful and influential. So if you had to guess what I rated this book. Guess. Just wait for it. What's your guess? Yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. Then I was like, damn, you know what? I read 3 books this month. I am on a mood with these books. So when Audible rolled around and gave me my free credit, not free, I don't know what you're talking about. I was just casually scrolling and I came across this book called Yoke by Jessamyn Stanley. And ooh, girl, this book is good. This book was a great random find. I loved it. So if you don't know, Jessamyn Stanley is a yoga teacher and also a body body positivity advocate, also identifies as a Black plus-size lesbian. Whether or not you practice yoga, Stanley's essay collection is an outstanding read for those wrestling with the big questions of life in today's modern culture and society. And it's also an exploration about, where people fit within those concerns and questions. The essays talk about cultural appropriation, fatness, colonization, capitalism, coming out, exploring religion and spirituality and finding your place. And another thing that I thought was pretty cool is she talks about the benefits of smoking and how it aids in her spiritual practice, in her yoga practice as well. All of the essays are explored through the Yoga Sutras, which I thought was very cool because I like yoga. I also listened to the audiobook and I highly recommend because listening to the author read their story always makes the story better. So I thought that this book was very refreshing to read, and Jessamyn has a voice in the yoga community that I finally felt like I could relate to. So I rated this book 4.5 stars. And then the last book that I read in the month of July was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This book is about Linus Baker. Linus Baker lives routinely by the rules. He's a dedicated caseworker, aka like a social worker, for the department in charge of magical youth. This guy is by the book. He reads the rules in his free time. He doesn't know a world outside of following something that's orderly. Then unexpectedly, Linus is given a top secret mission by the Department of Magical Youth, and it's to travel to this island where the most dangerous magical kids are living in an orphanage ran by Arthur. While there, Linus is expected to observe the orphanage, observe the children, observe how it's run, and determine whether or not they're dangerous and whether or not they can become productive members of society. But as in all good fairy tales, Linus soon finds out that there's so much more to Arthur and the children than he could have ever expected. I just want to say, I haven't read a single middle grade book since like Harry Potter and Percy Jackson when I was like in middle school. And to my surprise, I genuinely really enjoyed this book. It felt like a bedtime story to me, something safe and whimsical and protective. And honestly, every night I was so excited to snuggle up in bed and just read this comforting ass book like I was a little kid. One thing I love about this book is that it tackles some very serious issues in a comprehensible and lighthearted way. I loved how realistic and authentic all the characters felt, and I was even more excited by the LGBTQ plus representation in the book. I've never seen that explicitly done in a children's book. I absolutely love a good family dynamic, and this book successfully tackled that. Watching Linus build relationships with both Arthur and the children was incredibly heartwarming and wholesome. Not to mention, the world building in this book is incredible because I felt like I was there. I felt like I could see the island, I could see the town and the people. Themes of this book include tackling prejudice, acceptance, empathy, getting out of your comfort zone, and making decisions for yourself by yourself. I recommend this book to anyone who is seeking something that is happy and wholesome and looking for something that's whimsical. This book is perfect for those who need a serotonin boost. I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm really hoping that Disney makes a movie out of it that's better than Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Please make a movie, Disney. Or Netflix. Netflix is pretty awesome. So those are all the books that I read in the month of July, and I'm very proud of myself because it's been a while since I've read this much. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope there was something that you could take from it. If you've read any of the books, feel free to leave a comment below and let's talk about it. But I'll see you guys next week. Bye.